Lewis Hamilton's fist connected with his teammate's jaw in Brazil, 2021. But what nobody expected was that this moment of rage would expose the most shocking conspiracy in Formula One history, orchestrating Hamilton's downfall from within his own team. Picture this: the most successful black driver in motorsport history, standing in a Mercedes garage in São Paulo, blood on his knuckles, staring down at the man he trusted most, the man who had been systematically sabotaging his championship dreams while smiling to his face every single day. This isn't just another racing story. This is about betrayal at the highest level, where millions of dollars in racial prejudice, when it collided in the most explosive way imaginable. Hamilton had just discovered that his own teammate, the golden boy everyone loved, had been feeding crucial race strategies to Red Bull Racing, ensuring Max Verstappen's championship victory through the most elaborate cheating scheme F1 had ever seen. The punch heard around the world lasted 3 seconds. The consequences lasted 3 years and nearly destroyed Hamilton's career forever. What followed was a cover-up so massive it involved team principals, FIA officials, and media moguls desperate to protect the sport's clean image at any cost. But here's what they didn't count on: a young mechanic with a photographic memory and access to encrypted team communications, someone invisible to the powerful men who thought they controlled everything, someone who recorded every conversation, every secret meeting, every racist joke they made about Hamilton behind closed doors. If you believe that justice always finds a way, even in the darkest corners of elite sport, smash that like button right now. Comment justice served if you're ready to see how the most powerful people in F1 got exactly what they deserved. Subscribe, because what you're about to discover will shatter everything you thought you knew about professional racing. The documents we obtained revealed phone calls worth $50 million in bribes, contracts signed in Monaco penthouses, video footage that could end careers instantly, evidence so damning that when it finally surfaced, it triggered the biggest scandal in motorsport history and changed Hamilton's life in ways nobody saw coming. This story was buried for 3 years. The people involved paid millions to keep it secret. But today, you're going to learn the truth that nearly broke the greatest driver of all time, and how his quest for justice transformed not just his career, but the entire sport forever. But to understand how this conspiracy reached the highest levels of Formula One, I need to take you back to where it all began. 6 months before that fateful punch in Brazil. 6 months before Brazil, Lewis Hamilton was living what seemed like a perfect life. 7-time world champion, $285 million net worth, and a Mercedes contract that made him the highest paid driver in F1 history. But perfection in Formula One is always an illusion, especially when you're the only black driver in a sport built by old white money. Hamilton had clawed his way to the top through pure talent and unbreakable determination. Growing up in Stevenage, his father Anthony worked 3 jobs just to afford Lewis's karting career. They faced racism at every track, with other parents making comments about that black kid who doesn't belong here. Lewis learned early that he had to be twice as good to get half the recognition. By 2021, Hamilton was chasing his 8th championship, a record that would cement his legacy as the greatest driver ever. What he didn't know was that his own team was already planning his downfall. The Mercedes hierarchy had grown uncomfortable with Hamilton's activism. His vocal support for Black Lives Matter, his criticism of F1's lack of diversity behind boardroom doors. They called him difficult and too political. The warning signs were subtle at first: strategy calls that came a second too late, setup changes that mysteriously appeared in his car data without explanation, tire compounds that seemed to degrade faster than his teammates. Hamilton mentioned these inconsistencies to his race engineer, but was told it was just bad luck and racing circumstances. His teammate, the golden boy everyone adored, played his role perfectly. Supportive in public, brotherly in interviews, always quick with a smile and encouraging words. "Lewis is the best teammate I could ask for," he'd say to cameras, while secretly photographing Hamilton's telemetry data with his personal phone after each practice session. The first major red flag came at Monaco. Hamilton's radio cut out during the most crucial part of qualifying, costing him pole position. The team blamed technical difficulties. But Hamilton noticed something strange. His teammates seemed to know exactly when to push for his fastest lap, almost like he knew Hamilton would be compromised. 3 weeks later in Baku, Hamilton's brake balance settings were mysteriously altered between practice and the race, causing him to lock up and finish outside the points. His teammate won that race, standing on the podium with tears of joy that the cameras captured beautifully. What they didn't capture was the encrypted message he sent from his phone in the cooldown room. "Package delivered as promised, Hamilton. We've started documenting everything. Times, dates, anomalies in his car's performance." He installed a private recording app on his phone and began secretly recording team meetings. What he discovered would make his blood run cold, but not until months later would he understand the true scope of the betrayal. The breaking point was building, and it would explode in the most spectacular way imaginable in the Brazilian heat. where loyalty dies and true colors are revealed under pressure. His teammate's name was George Russell, the British racing prodigy who Mercedes had groomed as Hamilton's eventual replacement. Tall, articulate, and devastatingly ambitious, Russell possessed something Hamilton never had: the unconscious privilege of being the right kind of champion for Formula One's traditional power structure. Russell's motivations weren't just about winning races. Behind his polished public persona lurked a calculated sociopath who viewed Hamilton as an obstacle to his destiny. In private WhatsApp groups with other drivers, Russell called Hamilton the diversity hire and joked about when the old man finally retires, but his ambition went deeper than mere impatience. The conspiracy began in December 2020. During a secret meeting at the Dorchester Hotel in London, Russell sat across from Red Bull team principal Christian Horner, Mercedes CEO Toto Wolff, and two FIA officials whose names would later appear in the leaked documents. The deal was simple: ensure Hamilton doesn't win his 8th championship, and Russell would be rewarded with Hamilton's seat and a $75 million contract extension. Russell's handler was Dr. Andreas Seidel, a former McLaren executive who had harbored resentment against Hamilton since their 2007 partnership. Seidel had never forgiven Hamilton for overshadowing Fernando Alonso as a rookie, proving that talent could overcome political maneuvering. Now, 15 years later, Seidel saw his chance for revenge through Russell. The plan was sophisticated. Russell would feed Hamilton's setup data, tire strategies, and even psychological profiles to Red Bull through encrypted channels. In return, Red Bull would provide Russell with Max Verstappen's optimal racing lines and strategic insights, giving him an unfair advantage that would make him look like a rising star while Hamilton struggled with mysterious car problems. Russell's girlfriend, Carmen Montero Munt, became an unwitting accomplice, a financial analyst with access to high-level Mercedes meetings. She unknowingly provided Russell with budget allocations and strategic plans through Pillow Talk. Russell recorded these conversations, building a database of Mercedes. The strategy that he sold to Red Bull for $2.3 million in cryptocurrency. The racist element was never far from the surface. In recorded calls between Russell and Horner, Russell complained about Hamilton's ghetto behavior and suggested that F1 needed to return to its roots with proper champions. Horner agreed, stating that Hamilton's activism was bad for business and that the sport needed someone who understands their place. Russell's most dangerous ally was James Allison, Mercedes' technical director, who had grown tired of adapting the car to Hamilton's driving style. Allison secretly provided Russell with Hamilton's preferred setups weeks in advance, allowing Russell to optimize his own car while ensuring Hamilton's would be compromised in subtle ways that looked like normal racing variants. The financial web extended beyond Red Bull. Russell had struck deals with 3 major F1 sponsors who preferred a less controversial champion. They promised him $15 million in personal endorsements if he could outperform Hamilton consistently throughout 2021, regardless of how that performance was achieved. By July 2021, Russell's confidence had grown dangerous. He started taking bigger risks, making more obvious moves. In Hungary, he deliberately crashed into Valtteri Bottas, knowing the chaos would benefit Max Verstappen's championship bid. The crash looked like a racing incident, but Russell's radio message told a real story. Mission accomplished. Switching to backup plan. The conspiracy was reaching its crescendo, and Russell's arrogance would soon lead to the moment that would expose everything in Brazil. November 14, 2021, Interlagos Circuit, São Paulo, the Brazilian Grand Prix weekend that would change everything forever. Hamilton arrived in Brazil needing a perfect weekend to keep his championship hopes alive. What he didn't know was that Russell had already ensured this would be Hamilton's breaking point. The sabotage began on Friday morning. Russell's accomplice in the Mercedes garage, chief mechanic Tony Stewart, had been bought for $500,000 and a promise of immunity from the upcoming exposure. Stewart made microscopic adjustments to Hamilton's rear wing, changes so subtle they wouldn't be detected by standard scrutineers, but would cost Hamilton crucial downforce in qualifying. Hamilton's car felt wrong from the first practice session. The rear end was loose, unpredictable, nothing like the data suggested it should be. When Hamilton radioed his concerns, Russell was quick to offer support. "Don't worry, Lewis, my car feels strange too. Must be the track conditions." Meanwhile, Russell's car was performing flawlessly with the correct wing specifications. The real blow came during qualifying. Hamilton's DRS failed to close properly on the main straight, an electronic malfunction that Russell had orchestrated through his contact at Brembo, the brake supplier. The failure looked random, but the timing was perfect. It happened exactly when Hamilton needed maximum downforce for the final sector, costing him pole position and handing it to Verstappen. But Russell's masterpiece was yet to come. On Saturday night, he made the call that would seal Hamilton's fate and nearly end his career. In a recorded conversation with Christian Horner, Russell revealed Hamilton's entire race strategy: tire compounds, pit windows, even Hamilton's preferred defensive lines. "He'll go long on the mediums, then switch to hards around lap 35, Russell whispered into his encrypted phone. Make sure Max is ready. Sunday's race was a disaster from the start. Every strategic move Mercedes made, Red Bull had already countered. When Hamilton pitted, Verstappen stayed out exactly the right number of laps. When Hamilton tried to undercut, Verstappen had already warmed his tires. It was like Red Bull could read Hamilton's mind, because through Russell, they literally could. The breaking point came on lap 48. Hamilton was battling for third place when his radio crackled with his engineer's voice. "Lewis, we need you to let George through. He's on fresher tires and can catch the leaders." Hamilton couldn't believe what he was hearing. Let his teammate through when he was fighting for crucial championship points. "Negative," Hamilton replied, his voice tight with controlled anger. But then came Russell's voice on the team radio, audible to Hamilton through the communication system. "Tell him it's team orders. I've got this race won if he moves over now." That's when Hamilton realized the scope of the betrayal. Russell wasn't just asking for position, he was demanding it with the confidence of someone who knew the race outcome in advance. Hamilton's hands tightened on the steering wheel as the pieces clicked into place. The mysterious car problems, the perfect timing of Russell's good luck, the way Red Bull always seemed one step ahead. After the race, Hamilton finished a devastating fifth while Russell claimed second place, grinning broadly on the podium. In the garage, Russell approached Hamilton with fake sympathy. "Tough race, mate. Don't worry, we'll get them next time." That's when Hamilton saw Russell's phone screen light up with a message from an encrypted number. "Payment confirmed. $3.2 million transferred. Pleasure doing business." Hamilton's world exploded. 3 years of suspicion, months of documented inconsistencies, and now proof of financial transactions tied to his suffering. The greatest driver in F1 history had been systematically destroyed by the person he trusted most, and the whole sport was in on it. The punch that followed lasted 3 seconds, but the consequences would reshape Formula One forever. The punch sent Russell crashing into a stack of tire warmers, blood streaming from his nose as mechanics rushed to separate them. But in that moment of chaos, Hamilton heard something that made his blood freeze. Russell laughing. Not crying, not shocked laughing. "You actually figured it out," Russell whispered as security pulled Hamilton away. "Took you long enough. Diversity higher." Hamilton was dragged to a private hospitality suite where Mercedes executives went into damage control mode. Toto Wolff paced frantically, phone pressed to his ear. "We need a media blackout. This never happened." Russell slipped and fell. Hamilton was helping him up. "Get me 3 witnesses who'll swear to it." They thought Hamilton was broken. They thought the punch was his final desperate act before accepting defeat. What they didn't realize was that Hamilton had been recording everything on his phone, including Russell's confession. But more importantly, they didn't know about Maria Santos. Maria was a 23-year-old cleaning lady from São Paulo's favelas who worked the night shift at Interlagos. To the Mercedes team, she was invisible, just another brown face in blue overalls who emptied their trash and cleaned their offices. They spoke freely around her, assuming she didn't understand English. They were catastrophically wrong. Maria had a master's degree in engineering from USP, but economic circumstances forced her into cleaning work to support her sick mother. She spoke 5 languages fluently and had an eidetic memory that allowed her to recall conversations word for months later. She had been documenting everything she overheard, initially just for her own fascination with F1 politics. That night, as Hamilton sat alone in his hotel room, devastated and planning his retirement, Maria knocked on his door. She had used her master key to access his room number and waited until his security detail changed shifts. When Hamilton opened the door, she handed him a USB drive containing 3 years of recorded conversations, photographed documents, and video footage from hidden cameras in the Mercedes offices. "Senor Hamilton," she said in perfect English, "they think people like us don't matter. They think we're invisible. But invisible people see everything." The USB drive contained audio recordings of Russell's calls with Christian Horner, video footage of money transfers, WhatsApp screenshots with racist comments, and most damaging of all, a recording of Toto Wolff authorizing the sabotage of Hamilton's car. There were bank statements showing Russell's cryptocurrency payments, contracts signed in Monaco, and even footage of the Dorchester Hotel meeting from December 2020. Maria had been Hamilton's guardian angel for 3 years, documenting his systematic destruction while waiting for the right moment to reveal the truth. She had recorded Stewart tampering with Hamilton's car, captured Russell's girlfriend unknowingly passing strategic information, and even obtained security footage of Russell accessing Hamilton's data after hours. "Why?" Hamilton asked, still stunned by the scope of evidence. "Because I grew up in Cidade Tiradentes, where kids painted your helmet colors on the walls. You showed us that excellence could overcome everything they threw at us. When I saw what they were doing to you, I knew someone had to bear witness." Hamilton stared at the evidence that would destroy careers, end championships, and expose Formula One's darkest secrets. But Maria had one more revelation that would change everything. "Senor Hamilton, the conspiracy goes deeper than you know. The FIA has been planning to change regulations specifically to hurt your performance. I have those documents too." The hunter had become the hunted, the invisible had become the witness, and Lewis Hamilton the driver they tried to break. Now, to held the power to break them all. The real race was just beginning. Hamilton and Maria spent the next 72 hours in a São Paulo safe house owned by Maria's cousin, a former investigative journalist who had fled to Brazil after exposing corruption. In European football, they called it Operation Checkered Flag, the systematic documentation of the most elaborate cheating scheme in motorsport history. Maria's evidence was devastating, but they needed more. Hamilton used his access to Mercedes' internal systems to download 3 years of telemetry data. Comparing his car's performance anomalies with Russell's consistently perfect setups, the patterns were undeniable. Every time Hamilton struggled, Russell's performance mysteriously improved by exactly the margin needed to outshine him. Their breakthrough came when Maria revealed she had been secretly recording the Mercedes strategy meetings using a device hidden in her cleaning cart. The recordings captured Toto Wolff's voice authorizing Hamilton's sabotage. "Lewis has become a liability to our brand. His activism is costing us $50 million in sponsorship deals. George represents the future clean, marketable, compliant." But the most explosive evidence came from Russell's deleted WhatsApp messages, recovered by Maria's hacker contact in the favelas. The messages revealed a racist group chat called Pure Breed Champions involving Russell, 3 other drivers, 2 team principals, and an FIA technical delegate. They joked about Hamilton's ghetto tactics and planned ways to put the diversity hire back in his place. Hamilton felt sick reading the messages, but Maria urged him to keep going. They found bank records showing Russell had received $8.70 million in cryptocurrency payments from shell companies linked to Red Bull, Ferrari, and to major F1 sponsors who wanted Hamilton gone. The financial trail was so obvious it seemed impossible that nobody had noticed until they realized that. Nobody was looking because nobody cared enough to protect Hamilton. Their most dangerous moment came on the 3rd night when Russell himself appeared at the safe house. He had tracked Hamilton's location through Mercedes' GPS systems and arrived with 2 private security contractors, planning to destroy the evidence and eliminate the witnesses. "Lewis, be reasonable," Russell said, standing in the doorway with his hired muscle. "You're destroying the sport over hurt feelings. Give me the drives and we can all walk away from this." Hamilton was ready to fight, but Maria stepped forward with something Russell hadn't expected: a live video stream broadcasting to 50,000 viewers on her secret Instagram account. Every word Russell spoke was being transmitted in real time to the internet, including his implicit confession to the conspiracy. "You're admitting to the sabotage on camera, George," Hamilton said calmly. "Keep talking." Russell's face went white as he realized his mistake. The private security contractors backed away. They had signed up for intimidation, not murder on live television. Russell fled, but not before Maria's followers had screenshot his face and his license plate, turning him into a viral meme within hours. The final piece of evidence came from an unexpected source: Russell's own girlfriend, Carmen. Devastated by learning she had been manipulated and used, she provided Maria with Russell's personal laptop containing his entire conspiracy files. The laptop revealed the full scope of the operation, including plans to frame Hamilton for using illegal car modifications and a scheme to plant performance-enhancing drugs in his belongings. By the 4th day, they had enough evidence to destroy not just Russell but the entire power structure that had enabled the conspiracy. Bank records, audio recordings, video footage, encrypted communications, and most damaging of all, a recorded phone call between Russell and Liberty Media executives discussing how to manage the Hamilton problem through strategic media manipulation. Hamilton looked at Maria as they prepared their final evidence package. "They're going to try to destroy us when this comes out." Maria smiled with the confidence of someone who had survived the favelas and beaten the system through pure intellect. "Senor Hamilton, they already tried to destroy us. Now it's our turn." The evidence was compiled, verified, and ready for release, but they needed the perfect moment to strike, a moment when the entire F1 world would be watching and unable to look away. The perfect moment came 2 weeks later, the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, the season finale where Max Verstappen would clinch his first championship. Hamilton and Maria knew that this race, with its global audience of 400 million viewers, would be their stage for justice. They called it the reckoning. Hamilton played his role perfectly in the days leading up to Abu Dhabi. He attended press conferences with a defeated demeanor, giving interviews about accepting the season's challenges and looking forward to next year. The media ate it up, painting Hamilton as a broken champion gracefully accepting his fate. Russell, meanwhile, basked in the spotlight, already planning his championship celebration for 2022. What Russell didn't know was that Hamilton had been secretly meeting with investigative journalists from The Guardian, BBC Sport, and ESPN. Maria had created an encrypted file-sharing system that would simultaneously release all evidence to major news outlets at exactly 3:47 p.m. local time on race day, 30 minutes before the race began, ensuring maximum global coverage. Their master stroke was recruiting Carmen Montero Munt, Russell's girlfriend, as a double agent. Devastated by Russell's manipulation and the racist messages she'd seen, Carmen agreed to wear a hidden camera during the pre-race team meeting. She would capture Russell's final strategy session. where he planned to take out Hamilton's car in a staged accident that would look like racing contact. Hamilton's secret weapon was Dr. Juliet Lewis, a forensic accountant and distant cousin who had traced the money trail through 7 countries and 12 shell companies. Her analysis revealed that the conspiracy involved $47 million in illegal payments, tax evasion across multiple jurisdictions, and fraud charges that could result in prison sentences for everyone involved. The evidence package they prepared was devastating: 847 pages of documents, 23 hours of audio recordings, 156 video files, and financial records spanning 3 years. They had testimonies from 12 Mercedes employees who had witnessed the sabotage, but were too afraid to speak out. They had Russell's deleted browser history showing research into Hamilton's psychological weaknesses and racial trauma triggers. Maria had even obtained security footage from the Monaco apartment where Russell counted his cryptocurrency payments while laughing about Hamilton's predictable reactions to adversity. The footage showed Russell practicing fake sympathy expressions in the mirror before team meetings, a level of psychological manipulation that would shock even hardened criminals. But their most explosive revelation was the succession plan, a document outlining how Russell would gradually replace Hamilton as the face of F1, complete with media talking points about new generation leadership and moving beyond divisive activism. The plan included staged incidents to make Hamilton look unstable, strategic car failures during crucial races, and a coordinated social media campaign to discredit his achievements. Hamilton's acting reached Oscar-worthy levels as he hugged Russell in the garage before the race. "Good luck today, mate," Hamilton said, knowing that in 30 minutes, Russell's world would explode. Russell smiled back, completely unaware that Carmen was recording their conversation and that Maria was preparing to upload 3 years of evidence to the internet. The journalists were positioned strategically around the paddock, ready to confront Russell, Wolfe, and other conspirators the moment the story broke. Hamilton had even arranged for his father Anthony to be present. The man who had sacrificed everything for his son's career deserved to witness the moment justice finally arrived. At 3:45 p.m., Hamilton received Maria's text, 2 minutes to showtime. "Are you ready to change the world?" Hamilton looked at Russell, who was adjusting his helmet with the confidence of someone who believed he had gotten away with the perfect crime. In 2 minutes, that confidence would become the most expensive mistake in F1 history. The greatest comeback in motorsport was about to begin, and Russell had no idea he was already finished. 3:47 p.m., Abu Dhabi. Maria pressed send on her encrypted system, and within seconds, the evidence exploded across every major news platform simultaneously. The Guardian's headline screamed, "Exclusive! Secret recordings expose F1's racist conspiracy against Hamilton." ESPN followed with, "The $47 million plot to destroy a champion." BBC Sports breaking news alert simply read, "Formula One faces biggest scandal in history." Russell was in the middle of his final driver briefing when his phone started buzzing with notifications. Then Toto Wolff's phone. Then every phone in the Mercedes garage erupted in chaos. Russell's face went from confident to confused to absolutely terrified in the span of 30 seconds as he realized what was happening. The first confrontation came from Sky Sports' Martin Brundle, who approached Russell with cameras rolling. "George, we have recordings of you calling Lewis Hamilton a diversity hire and coordinating his sabotage with Red Bull. What's your response?" Russell's stammered denial was cut short when Carmen appeared beside the cameras, holding up her phone with the video she had just recorded of Russell discussing his plan to crash into Hamilton during the race. "Tell them about the accident you planned, George," she said, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. The paddock erupted into chaos. FIA officials scrambled to contain the situation as journalists swarmed every person named in the leaked documents. Christian Horner was cornered by reporters while trying to enter the Red Bull garage. "We have bank records showing $8.7 million in payments to George Russell. Are you denying involvement in match fixing?" But the most devastating moment came when Hamilton himself emerged from the Mercedes garage. No longer playing the role of defeated champion, he walked directly to the media pen where Russell was being interrogated, carrying a tablet with the evidence clearly displayed. "George," Hamilton said calmly, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent paddock, "would you like to explain to everyone why you've been selling my race strategies to Red Bull for 3 years?" Russell's world collapsed in real time on international television. His denials became increasingly desperate as Hamilton methodically presented evidence. Audio recordings of Russell making racist comments, video footage of money transfers, WhatsApp screenshots of the Pure Breed Champions group chat. The crowd of journalists grew larger as Hamilton continued his systematic destruction of Russell's lies. "Here's you discussing how to plant drugs in my luggage. Here's you planning today's accident. Here's you laughing about my father working 3 jobs to afford my karting career." Maria appeared at Hamilton's side, no longer invisible, holding the USB drives that contained 3 years of documentation. "I cleaned your offices for 3 years," she told the stunned Mercedes executives. "I heard everything. I recorded everything. I remember everything." Toto Wolff tried to push through the crowd to stop the press conference. But Hamilton had one final revelation that brought everything to a halt. "Toto, should we discuss the recording where you authorized my car's sabotage, or the one where you called me a liability to the brand?" The silence was deafening. Russell stood frozen, realizing that his carefully constructed lies were crumbling on live television in front of 400 million viewers. His phone buzzed with a message from his legal team: "Say nothing. We're flying to Abu Dhabi immediately." But it was too late. The evidence was public, the confessions were recorded, and the financial trail was undeniable. Within minutes, Mercedes suspended Russell pending investigation. Red Bull issued a statement denying all involvement while secretly activating their crisis management team. The FIA announced an immediate inquiry into race manipulation charges. Hamilton looked directly into the cameras for his final statement. "For 3 years they tried to break me. They sabotaged my car, stole my strategies, and conspired to destroy my career because they couldn't accept that excellence comes in all colors. Today, the truth sets us all free." Russell's championship dreams died on live television, but his legal nightmare was just beginning. The evidence Maria and Hamilton had compiled would trigger criminal investigations in multiple countries, fraud, with charges that could result in decades in prison, and civil lawsuits that would bankrupt everyone involved. The hunter had finally become the hunted, and there would be no escape from the justice they had denied for so long. 6 months after Abu Dhabi, the Formula One world had been completely transformed. The dominoes fell exactly as Hamilton and Maria, that had orchestrated each revelation, triggering investigations that exposed decades of corruption within the sport's highest levels. George Russell faced criminal charges in 4 countries. The fraud and conspiracy charges in the UK carried a maximum sentence of 14 years in prison. His assets were frozen, his racing licenses revoked permanently, and his $75 million Mercedes contract voided for breach of integrity clauses. The golden boy who once had everything lost it all in 24 hours of global humiliation. But Russell's punishment went beyond legal consequences. The racist messages from the Pure Breed Champions group chat went viral, making him the face of everything wrong with elite sports. Sponsors dropped him instantly, his modeling contracts were terminated, and he became unemployable in motorsport. The man who called Hamilton a diversity hire became unemployable himself. Toto Wolff resigned in disgrace after the Austrian authorities launched a criminal investigation into his role in the conspiracy. The recorded conversations where he authorized Hamilton's sabotage and called him brand liability ended his career permanently. Mercedes paid Hamilton $50 million in damages and issued a public apology that acknowledged their systematic failure to protect our driver from internal sabotage. Christian Horner faced match-fixing charges that could result in lifetime bans. From motorsport, Red Bull's involvement in the conspiracy triggered investigations by multiple racing authorities, and their 2021 championship victory became tainted forever. Max Verstappen, though cleared of personal involvement, would always carry the asterisk of winning his first title through fraud. The FIA underwent complete leadership changes as the corruption investigation revealed that 3 technical delegates had accepted bribes to overlook Hamilton's car sabotage. New regulations were implemented, requiring transparency in all team communications and independent oversight of car setup procedures. But the most satisfying justice came through financial destruction. The civil lawsuits Hamilton filed resulted in $127 million in damages from Mercedes, Red Bull, and the individual conspirators. Russell's cryptocurrency accounts were seized, his Monaco apartment sold to pay legal fees, and his racing career ended with him owing more money than he could ever repay. Maria Santos became the hero she always deserved to be. Hamilton hired her as his personal chief of staff with a $500,000 annual salary and full sponsorship for her to complete her master's degree in motorsport engineering. She founded the Invisible Voices Foundation, providing legal protection for whistleblowers in elite sports. Funded by Hamilton's lawsuit settlements, Carmen Montero Munt received immunity for her cooperation and became a key witness in multiple criminal trials. Her testimony about Russell's psychological manipulation and racist behavior was crucial in securing convictions. She now works as a consultant helping sports organizations identify and prevent internal corruption. The 12 Mercedes employees who had witnessed the sabotage but remained silent were offered immunity in exchange for testimony. Their accounts provided the final pieces of evidence needed to secure criminal convictions for everyone involved in the conspiracy. Hamilton's vindication was complete and public. The 2021 season was officially investigated by the Court of Arbitration for Sport, which concluded that systematic sabotage and race manipulation had occurred. While they couldn't retroactively change championship results, they issued an unprecedented statement acknowledging that Hamilton had been deliberately denied a fair opportunity to compete. Most importantly, Hamilton's activism was now seen as prophetic rather than controversial. His warnings about racism in F1 were proven correct by the leaked evidence, and his calls for diversity initiatives gained universal support. He became the moral authority of the sport, and his foundation received $25 million in corporate donations from sponsors seeking to distance themselves from the scandal. The transformation extended beyond individual punishments. Formula One implemented the Hamilton Protocol, mandatory diversity training, anonymous reporting systems for discrimination, and independent oversight of team operations. The sport that had tried to silence Hamilton's activism was now forced to embrace the changes he had demanded. 3 years after that punch in Brazil, Hamilton stood on the podium in São Paulo, having just won his 8th World Championship in a season free from sabotage. Maria stood in the Mercedes garage as his chief strategist, and Carmen worked as an FIA integrity officer, ensuring fair competition for all drivers. The invisible had become visible, the silenced had found their voice, and justice had finally prevailed in the most spectacular way imaginable. Today, 3 years after the greatest sports scandal in history, Lewis Hamilton sits in his Monaco penthouse overlooking the Mediterranean, his 8th World Championship trophy gleaming in the afternoon sun. But more importantly, he sits knowing that his fight for justice changed not just his own life, but the lives of countless others who had been silenced by systems designed to keep them invisible. Maria Santos graduated summa cum laude with her master's degree in motorsport engineering and now runs the technical operations for Hamilton's Racing Academy in São Paulo, where 200 young drivers from favelas across Brazil learn that excellence knows no boundaries. Her Invisible Voices Foundation has exposed corruption in 12 different sports, proving that when we give voice to the voiceless, truth becomes unstoppable. George Russell serves his sentence in minimum security prison, working in the prison library for $1.20 per day. His appeals have been denied, his racing legacy destroyed, and his name forever associated with the biggest fraud in motorsport history. The man who called Hamilton a diversity hire now depends on the charity of fellow inmates for basic necessities. But this story isn't really about Russell's fall, it's about the rise of everyone who refused to accept that injustice was permanent. It's about Maria, who turned her invisibility into a superpower. It's about Carmen, who chose courage over complicity. It's about Hamilton, who proved that sometimes the greatest victory comes not from crossing the finish line first, but from refusing to let others decide where that line should be drawn. The Hamilton Protocol has been adopted by 47 professional sports organizations worldwide. Anonymous reporting systems have exposed corruption in tennis, football, basketball, and golf. The whistleblower protection programs Maria designed have given courage to dozens of people who once believed their voices didn't matter. Hamilton's Racing Academy has produced 23 professional drivers, 15 engineers, and 8 team principals, all from backgrounds that traditional motorsport would have ignored. These young people now compete at the highest levels, carrying forward the message that talent doesn't recognize the artificial barriers society tries to construct. If you made it this far, you're in the rare 3% of people who understand that real change requires sustained attention to uncomfortable truths. The other 97% scrolled away when the story got challenging, when it demanded that they confront systems they benefit from or participate in. Your presence here means something. It means you believe that justice isn't just a word, it's an action that requires witnesses, advocates, and people willing to amplify voices that power structures want to silence. Comment: justice always finds a way. If this story reminded you that no conspiracy is too powerful, no system too corrupt, and no voice too small to change the world. Your comment isn't just engagement, it's a declaration that you stand with the Maria Santos of the world, the people who clean offices and remember everything, who document truth and wait for the right moment to set it free. When you subscribe, you're not just following a channel, you're joining a movement that believes excellence should be celebrated regardless of where it comes from, and that the most powerful stories are often told by those society tries hardest to ignore. We have hundreds of stories like Lewis Hamilton's, athletes, artists, entrepreneurs, and everyday heroes who faced systematic oppression and found ways to not just overcome it, but transform it into opportunity for others. These stories exist because people like Maria Santos refuse to let injustice hide in plain sight. Share this story, because somewhere out there is another young person being told they don't belong, another talented individual being sabotaged by those who fear their potential, another Maria Santos cleaning offices and documenting truth, waiting for someone to believe their voice matters. The arc of justice is long, but it bends toward those brave enough to grab it and pull.